What's up, everybody? It's me, E-Man, from E-Man's Movie Reviews. Today marks the 100th anniversary of the horrific Tulsa Race Massacre, which saw a white mob obliterate the prosperous area known as Black Wall Street. The following video is just a small snippet about the event while I was breaking down episode 9 of Lovecraft Country on HBO Max. Hopefully you'll find this informative and educational because the goal is to learn from our history so that we can have a more prosperous future. I'll also provide some links in the description for anyone interested. I think it's going to be helpful to give you the necessary context to understand why the Tulsa Massacre is such an important event and why this whole episode is wrapped around it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you why it's important for the characters in the story, and then later, towards the end of the video, I'll tell you why it's actually still relevant for today. During the early part of the 20th century, Tulsa, Oklahoma was home to one of the most affluent African American communities in the United States. This area, which was later named Greenwood, was probably considered to be the epicenter of black ownership and self-sufficiency. Black entrepreneurs flocked to this area and businesses soared from hotels, schools, grocery stores, a post office, banks, buses, taxis, hospitals, law offices, and so much more. This ultimately led to the community being famously known as Black Wall Street. It didn't take long, however, for many of the local white residents to resent the upscale life of the black residents they deemed to be inferior. Racial violence, lynch mobs, and anti-black riots were not uncommon, and there was also a resurgence of the KKK. So the blacks in Greenwood were encouraged to take up arms to protect themselves. In 1921, a 19-year-old by the name of Dick Rowland was accused of sexually assaulting a 17-year-old white girl named Sarah Page. As the calls for lynchings got louder and louder, the sheriff of the town refused to hand over Rowland to the angry white mob. A group of 75 black men from Greenwood came to the courthouse to protect Rowland. Well, a group of 1,500 white people came to clash with that group of black men. As the black men retreated back to Greenwood, in less than 24 hours, the white mob of almost now 2,000 eventually followed, and thus began the rioting, looting, and killing that is known today as the Tulsa Massacre. This mob, by the way, was also assisted by the police and even the National Guard. More than 35 blocks of homes and businesses were destroyed, and 10,000 people were made homeless, and as many as 300 black people were killed. The town was left in ruins. The blacks who did not escape were held in internment camps in the city. While the riot did make national news, the Tulsa media, however, refused to mention these riots and essentially tried to sweep it under the rug. Within the black community at that time, talk of the riots were also not mentioned, given how traumatic the events were on the community. Black people simply tried to suppress that trauma and not speak of it, especially to their children. I gotta be honest with you, I didn't know a lot of this information. It's not like some of this stuff was taught to us in school either. So, once I started looking all this stuff up and researching it, I gotta say, I had to take a breath and just pause for a minute. I mean, taking in all this information, it was heartbreaking. But you know what really got to me? I have to say it was actually seeing the town of Greenwood in Oklahoma. And I'm talking about a town that was flourishing just 40 plus years after slavery was abolished. So just imagine you were probably a 60-year-old person who was in chains, and now you're living in Tulsa and you're living in one of the most prosperous areas ever. I mean, to see the town of black folks just being at peace. Just living their lives, minding their own business. And in the back of my mind as an audience member, I'm sitting there and just waiting, knowing that all of this is about to be stripped away from them in less than 24 hours. That hurt. And I'm sorry to go on with this, but I hope you'll indulge me just a little bit longer because there's an important thing that I discovered that I think a number of people are going to miss and probably won't be discussed on other channels. Now, I know some of you have actually watched the HBO show Watchmen. Fantastic show. You should go watch it. And for a number of people, that was the very first time they ever heard of the Tulsa Massacre at all, let alone to see, a reenactment of it. So the Tulsa Massacre was definitely one of the most well-known race riots in America. However, did you know that Black Wall Street wasn't the first nor the only time that a successful and aspiring black community was destroyed by white neighborhoods? I won't go into a long explanation on that, but I'd encourage you to learn about all of these different race riots that happened before and after the Tulsa Massacre. I'll also leave a link in the description for you to learn more about them for anyone that's interested. Okay, let's get back to the episode.